to start the presentation. On behalf of the entire WTCI team and our board of directors, represented this morning by Jeff Semmett of Cassidy Turley and Jim Wheeler of Air Synchros, I welcome you to another installment of our President Series. This time, we're privileged to feature another exceptional speaker and leader, Mr. Robert Marshall, CEO of Earth Networks. For those of you I have not met, my name is Eddie Resende, and I'm the Director of Strategic Planning and Business Development for the World Trade Center Institute, the region's largest international business networking organization. We introduced the President Series back in 2005 to address the challenges companies have when doing business in global markets. It is intended to be a smaller and more intimate session. Our goal is to facilitate the exchange of knowledge and ideas and to touch on a wide variety of topics, such as supply chain management, mergers and acquisition, currency flexion. Examples of CEOs and companies we featured since 2005 include Robert Barnhill, Chairman and CEO of Tesla Technologies, Bronwyn Cole, Chairman and CEO of the News Network Systems here in Lincoln County, John Belcher, CEO of Bearing, Alan Wilson, CEO of McCormick, Brett Festa, CEO of WR Grace, and many others. We couldn't host this program without the generous support of our sponsors. First, HSBC, our first sponsor for this year. HSBC is one of the world's largest banks with 6,900 offices and is represented today by Jacob Strait, VP of Relationship Management, and John Treadwell, Vice President of Global Relations. Our second series sponsor is White, Fertel & Preston, an international firm with 160 attorneys and 8 offices, represented by counsel Trent Zinkovich. I'm thrilled to announce 2 new sponsors this year, Clifton Larson Allen and University of Maryland Robert H. Smith School of Business. Clifton Larson Allen is one of the largest leading certified. I'd also like to thank the entire Cassidy Turley team and the HMS host for providing us with this amazing place for us to meet today. In a moment, I'm going to introduce our featured speaker, Robert Marshall. But first, what we like to do, because this is a smaller and more intimate session, we like to go around the room and give each of you an opportunity to introduce yourself, just your name and the company, and if there's any exciting news about your company that you'd like to share, please do so at this time. And I'll start with our sponsors. Jake, let's go around the room.
How you doing? Jake Street with HSBC. I guess exciting. It's been quite 2 weeks with the government shutdown, so you know, other than that, we won't sit here and talk about that, but happy to sponsor.
John Treadwell, HSBC as well, and happy to be here.
Varghese George. I have 2 companies. One is called Washington Consular Service, and the other one is Westex, both doing service business for international trade.
I'm Marilyn Franklin from the Southern Maryland Black Chamber of Commerce, and one of our major accomplishments, we just finished a small business development leadership program with a delegation from Belarus on labor unions. So that was a major accomplishment for us.
Alejandro Pardo, I'm from the Trade Office and Investment Office of the Government of Colombia, promoting the free trade agreement that we have among our countries, so to let you know about the percentage that we have.
Hi, I'm Andrea Morris. I'm with the Robert H. Smith School of Business. Of course, we do a lot of things focused on business education. I work in our Office of Executive Programs, which runs our executive MBA degree. And then we also run a number of custom-designed executive education programs for companies, leadership development, and other business topics. And probably exciting news is that we're launching an online MBA in January of 2014 as well. So I'm happy to talk to you about any of our programs.
I'm Adrienne Van Leer, and I'm with the Montgomery County Department of Economic Development. I wear the international hat in the department, which means that I work primarily with local Montgomery County companies that have products and services that are internationally competitive. We want to sell those.
Where I help lead the firm's environmental and energy practices. On behalf of the firm, we're pleased to sponsor the event once again this year.
Nice to see you all today. David Balcom, University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science. We are a graduate school and research university with 4 laboratories across Maryland working on marine and terrestrial issues.
I'm Wally Pinkard with World Trade Center Institute, and I have the pleasure of working with Eddie and doing marketing and event planning.
I'm Jim Wheeler with Synchronous Architects. We focus on higher education, buildings and campuses globally, and more importantly, on the good weather.
I'm Jeff Simon with Cassidy Turley. We work with multinational companies, both domestically and internationally, handling all the real estate requirements.
Mike Line from Line Capital. I do international business development. Companies coming here, companies going overseas. Last month, I organized one of my clients from Saudi to bring the opening bells to the stock exchange. So that was a fun month last month, and I have programs for the mission.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Massimiliano Manidi from Italy, and I'm an intern at the World Trade Center Institute.
Hi, I'm Gail Rukamp, and I'm a major gifts officer for corporate foundation relations for the Community College of Baltimore County, so I'm the one who's always asking you for money.
Good morning, my name is Sean McNeil, and I'm the president of a company called Renewable Energy Corporation. We're one of the largest residential solar energy firms here in the Mid-Atlantic region, and we're excited to be diversifying our business and launching into the government sector in the near future.
President and CEO of the Lazarov Consulting Group. Our group works to promote international relations with Azerbaijan. We are happy to invite anyone who is interested for free to exhibit their products or services in Baku, Azerbaijan in December at the 19th annual exhibition Bakutel for technology companies.
Hi, Costum College. I'm a partner at CLA, Clifton Larson Allen, in our manufacturing distribution group. Happy to be a new sponsor here.
Robert Sherbakov from Clifton Larson Allen. As Eddie mentioned, we work with wonderful companies domestically and internationally.
Good morning, Mario Brassier. I'm the head of foreign investment at the Embassy of Switzerland here in DC, and I guess, Eddie, our biggest news is that our soccer team just qualified for the World Cup in Brazil.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jean from Newtown Dynasty TV Network. This NTD TV is a New York-based company. I'm a president and CEO in charge DC branch. So we're going to have a wonderful show, traditional Chinese culture show in Baltimore soon. So I want to work with WTCI and let our members enjoy the show and get benefits. So I'm a 2 days new member. And Debbie invited me to be here. And I live very close by here. I can walk to here, but I only pay. And our company also based in Bethesda. Thank you very much.
Good day. My name is Joe Judd. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at JPIGO. JPIGO is an affiliate of Johns Hopkins University. We focus on health programs for women from poor communities and saving lives at day of birth for mothers and for babies. And we work in about 55 countries around the world. Our latest news is that we've just signed an agreement with UNICEF to provide technical support to the United Nations Commission on commodities, health commodities for women and children. There are still issues in reaching what we call the bottom of the population pyramid, those who are most excluded. And we just signed, happily, two new agreements that put us in a better position in French-speaking countries where there are real lack of international cooperation. Cote d'Ivoire, we have an agreement with the United Nations Population Fund that we just signed in reproductive health and family planning. And in Burkina Faso, we just signed an agreement with USAID on prevention and treatment of plague.
I will introduce Robert in a sec. Thank you, everyone. We have a great group with us today. Let me tell you a little bit about the agenda for today. For the next 30 to 45 minutes, we're going to have a presentation, followed by some giveaway please make sure to take those with you. All right, now let me introduce to you our honored speaker, Robert Marshall, CEO of Earth Networks. Robert co-founded AWS Convergence Technologies, the company that was to become Earth Networks, in 1992. After serving as program manager and lead engineer at BBN, where he oversaw the development of several advanced military sensor, signal processing, and networking programs. In addition to running a company, Robert also sits on the board of directors of the Maryland Business Roundtable for Education, a coalition supporting education reform. Robert is a graduate of the University of Maryland College of Engineering and is a winner of the Maryland's International Leadership Awards. We invite him to share his story about his experience with Earth Networks and how he achieved success through fostering partnership and innovative technology. Robert Marshall will share his experience with supply chain management, managing a multicultural workforce, and the rewards and challenges of operating a business at an international level. Please welcome Robert Marshall.
Thank you all. Thank you, Eddie. It's great to be here this morning, and happy to share some of the details of what we're doing at Earth Networks and how we're trying to expand around the globe. I would say that we have some success for sure. We got some good success, but I think we're pretty early. I think we have many more significant opportunities for growth ahead of us if we can continue to figure out some of the challenges. I'll share some of those and happy to get feedback. I'm also pretty informal on the talk, so you can save your questions. If you got something as I'm going along, you want to ask it, just fire away, and we'll stop at the. The company's been around 20 years, a little over 20 years, and the mission is to take the pulse of the planet. We're really addressing the impacts and challenges associated with climate change, and we do it in a pretty unique way. And I'll share some of those details for sure. So we're headquartered in Germantown, Maryland. Our claim to fame is that we operate the largest environmental weather and climate sensor networks in the world. We partner with many of the leading institutions here in the U.S. and some around the world as well that I'll share, academic institutions and industry organizations. We really have two pieces of the business. One is really on enterprise data services, where we provide data and decision tools to enterprises for early warning and disaster risk management. On the other side of the equation, many of you may know of the WeatherBug brand, the WeatherBug applications on your desktop or your phone. We have about 30 million people, consumers that we deliver weather information to on digital platforms. So really, going back to my background, I'm an engineer, and from a technology perspective, some of our core competencies that we're trying to exploit around the world are in sensor networking, and we're really a world leader at that. And clearly, global opportunities are our future. That our growth, the vast majority of our growth, is going to be in global markets going forward. Just a little bit of background that I'm sure most of you are probably pretty familiar with. Some of these, at least high-level details, that is driving our business, and that is really, the impacts of climate change. And what we're plotting here is just natural disasters from 2012. And the bottom line is the red dots are geo events like earthquakes and tsunamis, but all the other ones, the blue and the orange and the green, are all some kind of meteorological or climate-related phenomena: droughts, floods, hurricanes, you name it. And so there's huge impacts across the globe in terms of how weather and climate are impacting society. It's having a greater and greater impact. It's going to continue to do so. If you look at the trend of that over time, and both of these charts, by the way, are from Munich Re, the reinsurance company, and that obviously has a very vested interest in tracking the impacts of climate change. So this is actually showing these disasters over the last 30 years or so. And again, the red ones are pretty steady, the earthquakes, and obviously we had some big ones with the tsunami and things like that. But the green, the blue, and the orange are all weather and climate related. And so these are major events that are having huge impacts, not only on lives and livelihoods, but economies around the world. And really when we say take the pulse of the planet, what we want to do is to help address these issues that countries are having around the world. And there's going to be a major, there is a significant investment today, but there's going to be more and more investment in this area when you look at some of the initiatives from the United Nations and the World Bank and then some of the other multinational funding agencies, and whether it's climate change adaptation, which is helping societies to adapt to what's happening, or mitigation in terms of trying to help minimize the impact of that. I'm going to talk specifically this morning about what's, some of the products and services that we're putting out there that are driving our business today are really around that disaster risk management and early warning. And it's a pretty amazing thing. I mean, we live here in the U.S. Obviously, there's 7 billion people or so on the planet. We crossed that threshold a year or so. But nearest I can calculate it, there's 6 billion people that have never, ever received a weather warning. I mean, so you see them here on our competitor, the Weather Channel, your local TV station. You get them on your phones, you get them on your desktop. You get weather warnings from the National Weather Service through any outlet that you want, and we're accustomed to it. We expect to be alerted. But outside of a few countries in Europe, Japan, Australia, almost no person in the world has ever been told that they're about to be impacted by severe weather. And we've got a breakthrough technology that can really help solve this problem. So we're an innovative tech company. We want to solve really hard, challenging problems. And this is a problem that we think we can have a very material impact on, and that is getting warnings to people for the very first time. And I'll describe how we're going to do that a little bit. And we do that by networking sensors together, collecting big data, and then doing fancy algorithms on it and providing decision tools to users. So today, all of those green dots across the globe are locations that we get weather or climate information from. They're not all owned and operated by us. About 10,000 of them are, though. So we are by far the largest operator of sensor stations in the world. And these things are weather stations that measure temperature and precipitation and pressure and winds and all that kind of stuff. And then also we install greenhouse gas stations that measure carbon dioxide and methane. So each one of these dots is a sensor station. It's connected to the internet in some capacity. It streams data back to us every second to our data centers. We take it, we analyze it, do things like that. So, and this actually makes us pretty unique in that we have a unique public-private partnership model. So we just don't sell sensors. In fact, we are not a sensor company. So the last thing we want to do is actually just sell hardware and sell sensors. So we enter into public-private partnerships, and we kind of go across the board. If you look at how, we're used to seeing a weather forecast, how does a weather forecast get developed? Ultimately, you have to observe the atmosphere, so you've got weather stations and things. You observe the atmosphere, you collect all the data, it goes into big supercomputers, and then it gets tailored to delivery to the end user, whether you're a consumer and you're just looking at it on your phone, or you're an energy company trying to figure out what the load is going to be on the grid today, or you're an agriculture, you're a farmer, and you need to make a decision on whether you're going to fertilize or not fertilize. And the weather impacts so many different pieces of the economy. And we operate not only, we're unique, and we're one of the only companies actually that do the whole value chain here. So there's many companies that take all the publicly available information from NOAA and other World Meteorological Organization and tailor information for energy companies or agriculture. But we get all that publicly available information too, but then we install our own sensor networks to drive and produce more local information, more accurate local information. So I described, and I'm not going to go into the details of the business, but our WeatherBug consumer business is roughly a little less than half of the business, and then our enterprise data services are the other half. I won't talk too much about greenhouse gases today. Obviously, it's a very difficult political climate here, but we operate the largest network of greenhouse gas sensors in the world. You're looking at an animation of, this is actually carbon dioxide concentrations in the Los Angeles, Southern California basin on a daily basis. So you can see what happens when LA wakes up and turns on the lights and you get in your car and you spew out all the carbon dioxide. This is actually, there's CO2 everywhere obviously, but this is just concentrations that are way above the global mean. So you can see all the man-made carbon dioxide here. And what we actually do with this information for policymakers is to trace it backwards and figure out where it came from. So policymakers, if you made a decision to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, how do you actually know whether you've succeeded or not in reducing emissions? You can try to count how much fuel you burned, or you can actually measure the atmosphere and figure it out that way. So that's one piece that we're working on. And then I'm going to show a quick breakthrough. We got a tech company. We've got to show off the technology just a little bit. So we'll give you an example of what we're doing for early warning, and then I'll talk about how we're expanding networks around the globe and some of the challenges that we see around that. So, and even more now, even the northern latitude. So, you know, severe thunderstorms, and this is just a classic severe thunderstorm. You actually see these what happens is they're like little bombs. I mean, they literally explode. The energy that rises up when you look at a time lapse like this. And you know what researchers have known for a long time is that thunderstorms and severe weather has a huge amount of lightning in it. So you see the lightning flashes going on in this storm. And they've known that if you could ever measure that lightning, it's a proxy for how severe the storm is going to be. So what we've done is develop a new sensor and deploy a network to actually measure every single little lightning flash. Not only the big ones that come down the ground, but there's lots of little sparks in the cloud. And this is what the history of a storm cell looks like. This will be my most technical view graph. So, after this, there won't be a test on this later. You know, but literally, so this is 1/3. We're actually looking at the lightning rate for a severe thunderstorm here. At 2 a.m., you know, there's almost no lightning. The storm is just starting, and then it explodes. And in just a matter of a few minutes, there's 40 flashes every minute. And then that's one of those billowing parts of the video that I showed. Then it collapses, another one happens, it collapses, another one happens. Then you get a big collapse, and the first tornado is on the ground there. It builds back up again, we get more tornadoes. But the long and short of it is, we're the only ones that figured out how to measure that lightning. And this is a very clear signal. When you see a spike like that, you know you're going to have severe weather. There's going to be flooding, high winds, and things like that. And it really is a breakthrough. You don't need, what we're demonstrating is, you don't need to have radars. So if I look at this, this is the Moore, everybody probably remembers the Moore, Oklahoma tornado from May of this year, just south of Oklahoma City. And I'm not going to go through the details of this, but the bottom line is these purple polygons that our system generates automatically based on just measuring the lightning, these orange polygons are the National Weather Service, U.S. National Weather Service. So these are the severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings. And they're completely independent of each other. So there's tens of billions of dollars that have gone into NOAA and the National Weather Service here to produce these warning polygons. And you can see there's severe weather in Michigan that day, there's a bunch down in Florida the same day. And we've got a technology that's deployed, is completely automated, no meteorologist in the loop, and produces the purple ones that overlay exactly on the National Weather Service alerts, have no knowledge, they're completely independent. And it's just an amazing piece of technology that our engineers and scientists have come up with. This is, you know, this is an example of, this is the Moore tornado. This particular one. This looks like radar. Everybody's accustomed to seeing radar on your phone or on your TV. This is not radar. It's actually just lightning data that produces this. And then these polygons. So this is a warning polygon here. So if you have our application here and you live, your GPS location's inside of that box, you get a warning instantaneously, completely automated. And again, I guess the key, one thing since we're talking international here, the key is 95% of the countries in the world have no radar. They have no ability to generate warnings to let people know. So we can go in and install it's very sophisticated technology, but very simple, very rugged, almost no maintenance, and automatically generate these things that are on par with the U.S. National Weather Service, which is the best in the world today. So we go back to the Moore tornado. This was the headline of Time, and you know, 16 minutes enough here in the U.S. Obviously it was not, but they did a pretty good job. But when you look at all the tornadoes for the last couple of years, the median National Weather Service warning time was 18 minutes, and our automated ones are 27 minutes. So we can actually improve warnings by 50% using the technology that we have. It's actually going to be a paradigm change here in the U.S. The Weather Service is actually going to buy our warnings and then use them to distribute. They've never done that from a private sector company before. But the key is, obviously, it's working great in the U.S., so NOAA buys it, FAA buys it, NTSB, the Air Force, NASA. So a bunch of people here in the U.S. buy our data now. And this is, by the way, if you go back a dozen years, they didn't buy data. They ran their own networks. But that's no longer very efficient. We can do it much more efficient. They can just buy the data from us instead of having to operate their own networks. And we sell the data, so when the NFL games were delayed, the very first Monday Night Football games you were trying to watch that, it was delayed by lightning. That's our data that did that. It's our meteorologists on the phone with the NFL that do that. So the question is, what about outside the U.S.? And this is really where the opportunity is. So we're installing networks in Brazil. INPE is the space agency, the NASA of Brazil. We're working with a bunch of different partners there, including Petrobras, the big fuel company. But India, we have networks in place with the military, with the Indian Institute for Tropical Meteorology. So you just heard in the news about the hurricane that just went into India, or cyclone that just went into India. Was it just a couple days ago, a few days ago? So we're installing networks in India and Spain, Japan going in here very shortly, China very soon. I'm going to show you actually some work for Guinea, which is something we're thrilled about. We haven't really announced it yet. It'll be a big announcement coming up soon. I'm not worried about sharing it here. It's not that big a deal, but it is a very big deal. So these are our networks that are going in around the world to help solve this challenge and help these countries really produce warnings for the first time. So let's talk about LDCs. I think this is a unique challenge here, in particular when we look at Africa. So these countries are disproportionately affected by climate change and severe weather, and obviously they have huge challenges across the board. This is, by the way, probably the most sophisticated national met agency. I think this is the data center of the Tanzanian Meteorological Ministry, and so that is their data center, and that's the whole thing. This is their instrument center here, and this, I think, is actually a picture. This is a weather station from Guinea, and this is the extent of what these countries have. So they really have little or no data upon which to make any good decisions. And unfortunately, there's a phenomenon that happens here for these countries that the challenges on everybody knows it's a big deal. So the UN just came out with a report that if countries had more capacity in this regard, they could really help themselves economically. Particularly agriculture is probably the most important thing. And then transportation. In Africa, to bring investment into Africa, they need to have reliable air transport. And Africa is one of the most unsafe countries in the world for air travel because they have no radars. So they really don't know what they're flying into. But when we deploy a network, then that's going to solve that problem. But the institutions, they really have institutional capacity limitations. They don't have the technology. And unfortunately, it's just a self-fulfilling cycle. They can't produce any good products for the ministries that have money and their governments. And then they don't have any products. They can't get money. They can't invest. They can't do it. So it's just a terrible cycle. And we're going to try to break that by using a public-private partnership model. We don't want to just sell them a piece of hardware. We want to come in and work in partnership with them to do it. The World Bank has spent $200 million on radars in Africa alone for countries, and they bought them hardware, and none of them work. There's not one working today, and they continue to do this, but now they're finally saying this isn't working anymore. We better come up with a different model. So the beauty is that there are some opportunities in the developing world, and I'm showing Africa, but obviously this applies virtually everywhere. And you see a picture like this, and obviously the interesting thing is, here you are in the middle of somewhere without a lot of infrastructure, but then you have this tower sitting here that is delivering cell service to a good chunk of the population. So you've got power, you've got communications, and you've got security, because everybody wants that tower to stay running, because that's how they stay connected to the world. So that gives us an opportunity to leverage that and put in place a network that does that. So let me just show you what we did in Guinea. This is just over literally the last number of weeks. Public-private partnership with the Meteorological Service. The Cellcom is the cell carrier there, and ourselves. We went into Guinea. It's on the western coast there. Literally in just a couple weeks, we trained the technicians from Cellcom to install 12 stations on cell towers. So you can see an example of the instrumentation that goes on the towers here. Plugged them in, reliable power, reliable communications, and this was yesterday in Guinea. So this is yesterday. There's severe weather in the central part of the country. This is just clicking along 24 hours a day now. They know the severe weather's happening. They've never known before. I mean, they have no ability to know that there's going to be flooding rains. And they have some hydropower and other dams out there for hydropower, and they need to know these things. So Dr. Boz, the head of the Met group there, he's able to provide the water ministry with information that they're going to have flooding rains in these areas. The country doesn't even have a website that I can find, let alone the Meteorological Institute. So we set up a website for the agency there, and so this is a post from yesterday. So they're able to actually deliver real information to other ministries in the government, and it's done very, very efficient. All the partners are really highly incented. The cell carriers know the data. Once you get people hooked on weather information on your phones, then they're going to want more and more of it, and so they're incented to make sure the stuff is in. So it's working great. I'm just going to cut back to the business now and talk about some of the challenges and some of our experiences. So, we're a relatively small company. We're 150 people, 140 people really. So, the red area is where we have active opportunities that we're exploring. So I think it's 78 countries or so that we have some activity in. So how do we do that? It's really a matter of having partnerships and representation in these countries. So, I think, in terms of some of the lessons that I've learned, that we've learned, and I'll just talk about this, is obviously just the culture. I mean, the cultures are so unique and so diverse around the world. And, to think that we can come in, as a U.S. company and understand it all, it's just not possible. So, it's been an amazing thing in Africa to see the challenges that they face with limited or no infrastructure. And we've had, I think it might have been Tanzania or Kenya, that the meteorological department literally almost came to tears when we showed them what we're doing, what we want to do, and we show them the actual warning. So when you get a National Weather Service warning, this is a severe thunderstorm warning from the U.S. National Weather Service. It's going to impact Bethesda at such and such a time. They dream of being able to actually do that one day, but they're nowhere close to being able to do that. But when we enter into a partnership with them, we will help them do that. We don't want to be on the front. We want to be the intel inside. The warning that goes out is going to be from the Guinea meteorological, not from us. But we're going to be behind the scenes, making sure the network works, using the technology, and then providing the information to them. And when we show them a warning, this is what it's going to be. And they're seeing it in Guinea today. I mean, for the first time, they're actually delivering warnings today in Guinea. So they're one of the most advanced meteorological agencies in the world with regard to thunderstorm warnings, because they get technology that's actually superior to the National Weather Service in Guinea. In the sixth poorest country in the world, they're able to do that. And I'll be down in Brazil again. We got tremendous stuff going on down there. In India, I can tell you, we've had really probably more challenges than we've had anywhere else, and that is I think we haven't had issues with the culture, but the infrastructure there we have challenges. Power, reliable power, and communications have been particularly challenging, even with the military, and we're just getting going with the meteorological group there. But clearly you have to understand, and to do that, and these next couple of things are really related all around the culture, and you have to have people there. And we can't have people there with 140 people. We're not big enough. We don't have that level of resource to do it. But we have local partners in 51 countries. So we have local partners that are trained on our technology, trained on our services, but they are local, they understand the culture, they know the people, they know how business works in the country. Our business is not big enough for them to operate a business on their own, but they can, they're basically like a rep firm, so they rep a number of different products in the environmental services, weather and climate area, and they're able to have a good business locally. So, I mean, you definitely have to be local, and where we don't have that, it's very difficult to go. Yeah.
So you're doing, this is real-time reacting within 20, 30 minutes kind of analysis across the globe, tsunamis and the like?
Yeah, so, well, so on, not so much on, well, the strength of hurricanes when they're out away from the coast, and that'll help them predict the storm surge. That's why they're using our sensor network. So the IITM in India, that's exactly what they're going to do. Well, we actually take all of our data, we plug it into models, we produce a 15-day forecast based on the observations that we take using an ensemble of the European model, the NOAA models, the Canadian models, and things like that. So we produce a forecast that'll help the energy companies in Africa for the next couple of weeks, and Latin America. We actually monitor drought, so when we have weather stations and the lightning stations, so we can have very good precipitation estimates over a long period of time, so that's instrumental to understanding whether you're going to have drought conditions and famine conditions as a result of drought. There's been a UN program called FuseNet, I think, Famine and Early Warning. Leave it at that, and take any more questions for sure.
Yeah, if you had to say, your network you put in Guinea, for example, what would you say the cost of that network versus the cost of what the National Weather Service would have? Something sort of comparable. How much cheaper is your system?
It's less than 10%. I mean, it's probably a few percent.
And if you have markets internationally.
What do you mean points of entry? So
I mean, are you working through the State Department to access?
Yeah. So a lot of different ways. So we do have local reps, right? So the local reps are really tuned in to what's going on in the weather and climate communities and what the needs are. So we have local reps. We definitely take advantage of the State Department and the embassies around the world to help us set up meetings with key stakeholders. And typically it's a government start, although I shouldn't say that's not actually true. I mean, the network in Brazil is largely funded by the energy companies. There was some seed funding from INPE, which is the space agency there, but most of the money now is coming from Petrobras and the other energy companies that have an acute need for data and decision tools from that. So we have the local reps. We definitely work with the State Department to help. I think increasingly we're going to be talking to the embassies here. I think I was talking earlier this morning that when we're actually bringing Dr. Ba over from Guinea here, and he's going to visit a bunch of embassies here in DC, and when they see what we have, then they're going to go back and make sure that their countries understand that there's a new paradigm here. So I don't know if that answered it, but that's so there's a lot of different things, but it's a lot of legwork, right? I mean, we got people over in Europe today. We got people going down to Africa again in a couple of weeks. I'll be in Brazil, and power and comms. You need some kind of reliable power and reliable communications, and largely the cell phone networks are have significant coverage in a lot of areas here, and our technology is pretty unique. A lot of particularly on the lightning side. It's pretty difficult to get them to work on cell towers because you get interference and things, but we've figured that out and solved that problem. But you need power and comms to have a reliable network. Yep.
It seems like most of your international business is trying to sell to governments and the kind of the half business as opposed to the weather bug type of business. Are you looking at the consumer market? Because it seems to me that a lot of the international telecom companies are really looking for extra revenue right now to the consumer market. You could help monitorize the weather delivery through those networks, plus you have them owning or leasing a lot of those towers, and then they also have the communication system already set up, so they seem like a natural kind of distribution focus point for you to the consumer market.
Yeah, absolutely. So we may announce something in the next month or two in Brazil, where we have an established network and good data. So, you know, it's a big consumer market in Brazil. So typically it's a government first. The reason it's government first is only because, you know, the national meteorological organizations are, you have to have them on your side. I mean, if we came in as a private company in many of these countries, and look like we were doing this on our own and not in partnership with them, I think they'd be very resistant to that. Because they were in on their territory and they see themselves, it's their mission to do this. They haven't been able to do it yet, right? But it's their mission to, in Brazil. I mean, Brazil hasn't, there's no warnings that have ever been issued in Brazil for as developed as Brazil is. So we are delivering the warnings today. So we'll announce in Rio, you know, when they had the 1,000 people killed there with the floods there a year or two ago, whatever it was, yeah. And so we're actually delivering the warning, selling it. But to your point, so the sustainable model that we have is to get the government on board, get the national agency on board so they're a partner. Then we will get the energy companies, the agriculture companies, the Cellcom companies to get involved because we can generate revenue from them. And then the consumer stuff will follow for sure. I mean, it's kind of the, you know, and you'll have to pick our spots because, you know, if we had 10 million users in Africa on the cell phone, I'm not sure what the revenue could still be zero. I mean, you'd have costs, but no, I mean, because there's no ad market. I mean, right? And then most of our revenue is from advertising on these things. And so in the developing world, there's a limited market to generate revenue on consumer. You can do a subscription, you know, but it's coming. It'll be there. And you know, so we'll partner with the media companies too. Geez, all the names are escaping now. But the big telecom in Latin America, South America, I forget the name of it. It'll come to me in a second. But yeah.
Have you always developed technology in-house, or do you license some? Do you have university partnerships?
Curve, you know, he is the godfather of measuring greenhouse gases, so we have a partnership with them. He actually designed our system for greenhouse gas monitoring. We work at the University of Oklahoma in Norman, the severe weather capital of the world, so we're setting up a center for severe weather early warning there with the University of Oklahoma. So we have, most of our engineers are in Germantown. We have about 40 engineers, but then we have an office in Silicon Valley that does our mobile development. We have done some work in Russia, so we have I have to talk to our CTO. We don't do it a lot, but we have outsourced some development in Russia.
The Moore, Oklahoma tornado, and all the coverage you had from Oklahoma through Kansas of the lightning strikes, how many data points are you collecting from to get all that information?
Yeah, it's a massive amount of data. This is real technical. This is actually lightning data, so you're hearing some technology. So there's like 12 sensors there. Each row is a sensor. The way we do lightning is if you listen to AM radio, right? If you're driving around your car, AM radio in a thunderstorm, you hear a crackle every time that there's a lightning strike, right? And it interrupts your radio. Well, every one of these things is a lightning strike. We're looking at 1 second of data, but if I zoom in on this guy, now we're looking at 1/5 of a second of data, okay? If I zoom in on it again, now we're looking at 1/20th of a second of data. If I zoom in on it again, now we're looking at 1/100th of a second of data. Now we're looking at whatever that is, 2 milliseconds of data. Now we're looking at, so this, every single lightning flash. So what we see is that this lightning flash arrived at this sensor first, and then at this one, then at this one, then at this one, and then across these other sensors. So now we can triangulate exactly where that lightning happened within 200 meters, based on how, you know, we measure down in the nanosecond, when that electromagnetic pulse, just like you got to your radio, it gets to our sensors. So that's how we do it. We basically, but we'll do, like on that day, we're doing 50 to 100 lightning flashes per second. So that's just one, and you can see all the data that comes in from that one, but it's 50 to 100 flashes a second when you have storms going on all over the world.
My other question was about weather culture. As I travel around the world, I always come back and think, oh, the Americans are obsessed.
You know, relative to our stuff, you know, it's only, just like countries have skipped landline telecommunications and gone directly to the cell phone, and they'll never have landlines. Many countries are not ever going to install radars because they're just too expensive and too complicated, and it doesn't work. But once they have our stuff, then it's going to do most of what they need to do. But we still have to evangelize that story and work through all the obstacles and hurdles to get together.
Yes, I think what you're doing globally is fantastic, but I have a little bit more of a self-serving question that applies to a lot of us in this room here. Do you have any predictive data or expert opinion on the winter we can expect ahead here? Should I be shopping for snowblowers or trying to get by with a shovel?
All I heard is that the Farmer's Almanac said it's going to be a bad winter. But actually, I should actually know that because our meteorologists do produce a long-range forecast for the winter for our energy customers. And frankly, I have no idea what it is, whether we've done it or not.
To do with the jet streams and the Arctic?
I can talk to our meteorologists, and maybe it's on our website if we've produced it. I don't know if we've issued it yet. We will. I mean, I would say generally it's going to be warmer because the climate's getting warmer. So it's, you know, the days of many cold. You can still get a cold winter for sure and a lot of snow, but generally they're yes. The answer is yes, without question. I mean, perfect is obviously difficult. You know, when it's a severe weather outbreak, you know, 3 or 4 days from now, a big one like the Moore tornado. I mean, they knew that was going to be a bad day days before. They knew it would be, you know, right around that time. They had a couple-hour window. They had within 50 miles, you know, kind of that, what is it, the I-35 corridor there in the middle of the country. So, I mean, it's incredible how much better it is today. But you still have misses. I mean, it's a very complex system, and you know, without a lot of data, the more data you get, the better it's going to be, and it will continue to get better. The long-range stuff is still challenging. It's a whole other problem, the long-range climate predictions. I mean, those models are very sophisticated and getting better too, but you need more data and more science. Yep.
Do you guys have any plans, or do you do anything where you can actually take data from people's phones and use it for predictive models?
We are not. A company in London that is actually doing just that. I forget the name of the company, but you know, we work with Google on the Android devices. I'm sure on an iPhone, but each Android device has a pressure sensor, temperature sensor, humidity sensor on it now, particularly the latest one, the Samsung one. So, you know, can you crowdsource all that data and make something of it? There's no question you can. I mean, there's a lot of noise in that data. I mean, this phone, you know, but you can figure out that it's inside, it's not outside. You can figure out that it's, you know, sitting in the sun, and the temperature sensor is really high. But when you get big data, there's definitely valuable information that can come out of that, and it will ultimately. Right now, it's in its infancy, but every one of these things is a sensor. You know, I think IBM says there's trillions of connected sensors, and that's, you know, more sensor data is better for just about anything that you're trying to solve. Yeah.
Do you have any comments or thoughts? Is it something to talk about? Is it something? Is there something else that we can do or that we are doing besides talk about it around the proverbial water cooler and constantly hit refresh on the browsers?
Right. It's a good, important subject that's being talked about a lot.
Yeah, you mentioned about the market potential. I think it was $100 billion, and also you guys being monitoring the largest network of sensors, 10,000. Can you tell us a little bit about your competitors, like who's behind you guys, and how many sensors are they monitoring? And is the competition coming from the U.S. or Europe? Or?
It's, you know, on the consumer side of the business, there's tons of competitors. I mean, the Weather Channel here in the U.S., AccuWeather on the consumer side. So I'll put that aside because, you know, there's 1,000 apps for your iPhone. Right. We're one of the bigger ones, but there's tons of competition here on the consumer side in the U.S. Around the world, there's nobody that really does it the way we do it. There's a bunch of instrument companies, right? There's probably a dozen companies that sell radars, and you know they're out pitching countries to buy their radars or pitching the World Bank to fund a radar for a particular country. There's a company that sells lightning sensors from Finland. Vaisala we consider a competitor, but there's not many that actually operate the networks for countries. So it's pretty unique to us. But our challenge is changing the paradigm because countries are used to buying stuff, I mean, they have procurement mechanisms where, I mean, if they have a capital budget and, you know, they've always wanted a radar, it's like the shining, you know, beautiful shiny object in the glass window. I want a radar, and if I've gotten, you know, 10 million bucks, my God, I'm going to buy a radar, right? Because, I mean, you know, the National Weather Service here has radars, and they do fantastic things. So our challenge is not so much competing against somebody that's doing it our way, but it's changing the paradigm to, look, don't just buy the hardware. That's never worked. And you can buy the hardware from dozens of companies that make different things. Partner with us. We will work with you to put the network in. We'll make sure it works. We'll make sure it produces quality data. We'll make sure that we actually produce decisions and get results. And so our sale and challenge is more around evangelizing and changing the model as it is competing against somebody that has a similar technology.
No, I'm just going to say, I think your statement about the changing or the need to change the paradigm is straight on. And the whole issue about classical demonstration showcase projects in developing countries for the last 50 years is there. The fact that what's really missed when there are solutions is some other agenda, a show agenda. And so then how do you deal with that with an elite, both governmental as well as economic in the country, that sets that agenda? How do you get to them? You mentioned earlier a couple of things I think are very important. One is you talked about the fact that you had to really have a win-win relationship.
Announcements to make. You have the flyers there for upcoming events. We're doing one, as I mentioned, in December. We have our State of the Ports and Embassy Wine tasting. Hopefully you can join us for that and another installment of the Present Series. We have another half an hour, and we have some sandwiches and some drinks, so please stay for lunch and network. And if you have any additional questions for either our sponsors or for Robert, feel free to do so during the lunch. Thanks again.